Captain Ethan Powell stood at the bridge of the USS Horizon, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The strange ships had appeared without warning at the edge of the solar system. They were unlike anything humans had ever built, sleek, almost organic, in design, with a metallic surface that seemed to shimmer and shift colors in the void of space. "All stations report," he said, keeping his voice calm despite the tension that filled the air. Lieutenant Jack Winters at Tactical spoke first. "No weapon signatures detected, Captain, but their shields are unlike anything I've seen before. Our scans barely penetrate them." Dr. Olivia Martinez, the ship's chief science officer, looked up from her console. "Captain, they're broadcasting. Some kind of signal. I think they're trying to communicate." Powell nodded. On screen, the view screen flickered, and Powell found himself looking at an alien face. The being had a tough, ridged exoskeleton covering most of its features, with 4 eyes set in a diamond pattern. When it spoke, its mouthparts clicked and moved in complex patterns, but somehow the words came through in English. "I am Fleet Commander Krelvor of the Zoridian Empire. You have been detected as an unknown species. Identify yourselves." Powell straightened his uniform. "I am Captain Ethan Powell of the Earthship USS Horizon. We represent humanity and the United Earth Government. We welcome peaceful contact with your people." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern. "Earth. We have detected your transmissions for some time. Your planet is primitive, but we are always interested in new species." Dr. Martinez whispered from behind Powell. "Captain, their universal translator is incredibly advanced. The linguistic algorithms needed to learn English just from our broadcasts." Powell nodded slightly. "These aliens, these Zoridians, clearly possess technology far beyond human capabilities." "We propose a meeting," Powell said, "to establish diplomatic relations between our peoples." Fleet Commander Krelvor seemed to consider this. "Very well. You may dock with our command vessel. Bring no more than 5 of your kind." The screen went dark before Powell could respond. "Well," said Lieutenant Winters, "they're not big on goodbyes." Powell turned to his officers. "Dr. Martinez, you're with me. Lieutenant Winters, you'll handle security. Tell Lieutenant Commander Hayes and Ensign Nguyen to meet us in the shuttle bay. We leave in 30 minutes. As they prepared for the meeting, Dr. Martinez reviewed what little data they had gathered about the alien ships. "Captain, their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of ours. Faster than light capabilities, energy shields we can barely detect, let alone penetrate, and their hull material is unlike any alloy we've ever seen." Powell checked his sidearm before holstering it. "Then we'll have to rely on diplomacy rather than strength. We represent all of humanity now. Let's make a good impression." The shuttle journey to the Zoridian command ship was brief but tense. As they approached, Powell couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The alien vessel was massive, at least 5 times the size of the Horizon, with a design that seemed to defy human engineering principles. They docked in a bay larger than a football field, where 3 Zoridians waited for them. Standing upright, the aliens were nearly 8 feet tall, their exoskeletons gleaming under the bay lights, making them look like living statues. Powell led his team forward, extending his hand in the universal human gesture of greeting. "Thank you for welcoming us aboard." The center Zoridian, who Powell assumed was Krelvor, looked at the offered hand with what seemed like confusion before ignoring it completely. "Follow me, Earth creatures. Admiral Dravkor will speak with you." As they walked through the corridors of the alien ship, Powell noticed the Zoridians moving with incredible speed and precision. Their exoskeletons provided natural armor, and their movements suggested strength far beyond human capability. They were led to a large chamber where an even more imposing Zoridian waited. Admiral Dravkor's exoskeleton featured elaborate markings that seemed to indicate rank or status, so, the Admiral said, his voice deeper and more resonant than Krelvor's. "These are the humans. Smaller than I expected." Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Admiral, we're eager to learn about your civilization. The Zoridian Empire must be vast to have developed such advanced technology." Dravkor made a sound that might have been laughter. "Vast indeed, human. 3,000 star systems all united under Zoridian rule for over 10,000 of your Earth years. And you? One planet, barely able to reach your own system's edge. Powell maintained his diplomatic composure. We're a young spacefaring species, admiral but eager to learn and grow. The admiral circled them slowly, examining each human with his 4 eyes. Yes, young indeed. And physically, unimpressive. No natural armor, no significant strength, no redundant organs. He reached out suddenly and grabbed Powell's arm, squeezing just enough to demonstrate his superior strength without causing injury. Soft skins, barely evolved beyond your primitive origins. Lieutenant Winters tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon, but Powell gave him a warning glance. Physical attributes aren't everything, Admiral, Powell said calmly. Humanity has survived and thrived through intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation. Drevkor released Powell's arm. Pretty words, Captain. But in the galaxy, strength matters. Technology matters. Numbers matter. You have none of these. Dr. Martinez spoke up. Perhaps we could establish a cultural exchange, learn from each other, before discussing any formal relations between our peoples. The Admiral seemed amused by this suggestion. Cultural exchange? What could we possibly learn from you? But very well. It will be entertaining to observe your primitive species more closely. After the meeting, the humans were escorted back to their shuttle. Once they were alone, Lieutenant Winters couldn't contain his frustration. They're treating us like children, Captain. Or pets, Powell nodded grimly. They see us as weak, Lieutenant. A curiosity at best, a potential vassal world at worst. Dr. Martinez was reviewing data on her tablet. Captain, I've been analyzing the cultural information they shared. The Zoridian Empire has a history of incorporating what they call lesser species. It's essentially colonization. They provide technology and protection in exchange for resources and labor. Powell looked out the viewport at the massive alien ship. Then we need to tread carefully. We can't match their strength or technology, but we need to make them see us as equals, not subjects. As their shuttle approached the horizon, Powell made a decision. Dr. Martinez, I want you to compile everything we know about Zoridian physiology and psychology. Lieutenant Winters, review our security protocols. If these talks go poorly, Earth needs to be ready. The shuttle docked with the horizon, and as Powell stepped back onto his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just faced its first real test as a spacefaring species, and the Zoridians had found them wanting. What the Zoridians didn't understand yet was that humans had faced seemingly insurmountable odds throughout their history and survived. They had mistaken physical weakness for weakness of will, of intelligence, of spirit. It was a mistake many others had made before. And like those others, the Zoridian Empire would learn that mocking human soldiers was the first step on a path they might come to regret. A week had passed since the first meeting with the Zoridians. Now the USS Horizon orbited Earth alongside 3 massive Zoridian ships that dwarfed anything in the human fleet. Their presence cast both literal and figurative shadows over the planet below. Lieutenant Jack Winters watched as 20 Zoridian soldiers filed into the Horizon's training facility. They moved with precision, their exoskeletons gleaming under the lights. Commander Zevtak led them, his posture radiating confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Welcome to our combat training center," Winters said, gesturing to the various equipment. "As agreed in our cultural exchange, we'll demonstrate human military training methods today." Commander Zevtak clicked his mouthparts in what Winters had learned was a sign of amusement. "Yes, we are very curious about how such delicate creatures prepare for combat." Dr. Kate Simmons, the xenobiologist assigned to the exchange program, stood nearby taking notes. She caught Winters' eye and gave him a small nod of encouragement. "Sergeant Miller," Winters called, "let's show our guests basic strength conditioning." Daniel Miller, a broad-shouldered Marine with an impressive record, stepped forward. He began with standard exercises, bench presses, squats, deadlifts, lifting weights that would challenge most humans. The Zoridians watched in silence. Then, Commander Zevtak stepped forward. "May I?" he asked, indicating the bench press. Winters nodded. "Of course." Without any visible strain, Zevtak lifted the fully loaded bar with one hand. The weights that had made Miller sweat seemed like toys to the Zeridian. "Interesting equipment," Zevtak said, setting the weights down gently. "Very suitable for your species' limitations." The demonstration continued with combat drills. Human. Soldiers showed their hand-to-hand techniques, weapon proficiency, and tactical maneuvers. Throughout it all, the Zeridians observed with what seemed like growing disappointment. After the humans finished, Commander Zevtak addressed his soldiers. "Perhaps we should show our hosts real combat training." Two Zeridian soldiers stepped forward. What followed was a display of strength and speed that left the humans in stunned silence. The aliens moved faster than seemed possible for their size, their natural armor deflecting blows that would cripple a human, their strikes powerful enough to dent the metal training equipment. When they finished, Zevtak turned to Winters. "Would you care to try a friendly sparring match? I promise to be gentle." Winters knew a challenge when he heard one. He also knew accepting was foolish, but diplomacy required certain sacrifices. "Sure. Just training rules, of course." They faced each other in the center of the training mat. Winters assumed a defensive stance while Zevtak simply stood there, four eyes blinking in that unsettling pattern. The match was brief and humiliating. Winters, despite his years of training, couldn't land a single blow. Zevtak moved with impossible speed, blocking every strike effortlessly before finally pinning Winters to the mat with what seemed like minimal effort. "Your technique is interesting," Zevtak said as he helped Winters up, "but without strength to execute it, quite useless." Dr. Simmons stepped forward. "Commander Zevtak, physical strength is just one aspect of combat readiness. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and problem solvers. Our advantages lie in endurance, adaptability, and creative thinking." Zevtak made that clicking sound again. "Admirable attempts to compensate for weakness, Doctor. But in real combat, the stronger species prevails." Later that day, aboard the Zeridian command ship, General Dravkor reviewed footage of the human training exercises. With him was the newly arrived Governor Zoltek, who would oversee the diplomatic outpost being established on Earth's moon. "Are these recordings accurate?" Zoltek asked, watching humans strain to lift weights that a Zeridian child could handle. "Entirely," replied Dravkor. "They are even weaker than we estimated. Their skin tears easily, their bones break under minimal pressure, and they tire quickly." Zoltek's four eyes narrowed. "Yet they've survived on a planet with significant gravity and predatory species. Curious." "They compensate with tools and group tactics," Dravkor said dismissively. "But they pose no challenge to the Empire. Their planet is rich in resources we need, and their species will make adequate laborers after proper conditioning." On the horizon, Captain Powell met with his senior staff to discuss the day's events. The mood was somber. "They're not even trying to hide their contempt anymore," Winters said, rubbing his bruised shoulder. "That wasn't a cultural exchange. It was a demonstration of superiority." Dr. Martinez displayed images on the main screen. "I've analyzed their physiological data. Their exoskeletons are approximately 5 times stronger than our strongest alloys. Their muscle density is triple ours, and they have redundant organ systems." "What about weaknesses?" Powell asked. "They have fewer pain receptors than humans," Dr. Simmons added. "It's an evolutionary adaptation to their tough exoskeletons. And they seem to rely heavily on rigid command structures. There's little individual initiative among their ranks." Powell nodded slowly. "And their psychology?" "Highly hierarchical," Martinez replied. "They respect strength and little else. Their entire society is built around power structures, with advancement coming through demonstrations of superiority." Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Captain, we received word from Earth Command. The Zeridians have requested permission to establish additional outposts in strategic locations around Earth. They're calling it cultural exchange, but the proposed locations match our major military installations almost exactly." And there's more. Lisa Koyan, their intelligence officer, added. We've intercepted communications suggesting they're bringing in far more equipment to their lunar base than disclosed. Military equipment. Powell's expression darkened. So they're not just looking down on us. They're planning to take over. What do we do? Winters asked. We can't match them technologically, and we certainly can't match them in physical combat. Powell stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at Earth glowing blue and green below them, and at the massive Zoridian, ships that now threatened it. We do what humans have always done when facing a superior force, he said quietly. We adapt. We find another way to fight. The next morning, Admiral Krelvor arrived on the horizon for what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic meeting. Instead, he found Captain Powell with a comprehensive proposal. A joint military exercise? Krelvor seemed surprised. After yesterday's demonstration, I would think you'd want to avoid further comparisons, Powell smiled. On the contrary, Admiral, if we're to coexist peacefully, we should understand each other's capabilities fully. We propose a simulated combat scenario, your forces against ours, in controlled conditions. This would be entertaining, Krelvor admitted, though hardly a fair contest. Perhaps not, Powell agreed, but illuminating nonetheless. As the Zoridian left, Dr. Martinez approached Powell. Are you sure about this, Captain? They'll crush us in any conventional exercise. Powell's smile remained, but his eyes were hard. Who said anything about conventional? The moon's gray surface stretched out beneath the newly established Zoridian outpost. Governor Zoltek stood at the viewport, watching as more ships arrived carrying equipment and personnel. What the humans believed was a small diplomatic station was quickly becoming a military stronghold. The humans suspect nothing? He asked Commander Zevtak, who stood at attention behind him. They monitor us, of course, Zevtak replied. But their technology is primitive. They cannot detect our shield, generators, or weapon systems through our cloaking fields. Zoltek nodded in satisfaction. And their proposed military exercise? Admiral Krelvor has approved it. He believes it will further demonstrate our superiority and break their spirit faster. Less resistance when we begin the resource extraction. Earth Major Ryan Campbell crawled through the dusty ventilation shaft of the Zoridian embassy. His special forces team had spent weeks studying the building's layout, finding the blind spots in alien security. Now they were placing tiny monitoring devices in key locations. Eagle in position, he whispered into his comm unit. Placing package 3. Copy that, Eagle. Lisa and Nguyen responded from their hidden command post 5 miles away. Our signal. Jammers are holding. You've got 4 minutes before their security sweep. Campbell worked quickly, attaching the nearly microscopic device to the shaft wall. These surveillance units were Earth's best technology, small enough to avoid detection by most Zoridian scanners, powerful enough to record conversations through walls. When he finished, Campbell retreated the way he came, careful to leave no trace of his presence. Outside, he blended into the crowd of a busy Washington street, just another human going about his day. Meanwhile, on the USS Defiant, Captain Vera Rodriguez supervised final preparations. Unlike the Horizon, which was an exploration vessel, the Defiant had been quickly retrofitted with Earth's most advanced defensive systems, many of which were experimental and untested. Status report, Rodriguez called out to her engineering chief. Stealth systems operational, Captain, he responded. The new reflective hull coating should mask our heat signature from Zoridian scanners. Electromagnetic pulse generators are at 92% capacity. Rodriguez nodded. And the modified railguns? Installed and calibrated. If their shields work like we think they do, these might actually penetrate them. Rodriguez wasn't optimistic, but she kept her doubts to herself. The Defiant was humanity's best shot at having a ship that could at least surprise the Zoridians, if not match them. At the Joint Earth-Zoridian Command Center, Captain Powell met with Admiral Krelvor to finalize details of their military exercise. We propose a simple scenario, Powell explained, displaying a map of the exercise area, a remote region of the Pacific Ocean. Your ships will attempt to locate and neutralize ours. A basic search and destroy mission. Krelvor made the clicking sound that Powell now recognized as Zeridian laughter. And your ships will attempt to evade us? With your primitive technology? That's right, Powell said calmly. We'll have a 24-hour head start. After that, your vessels can begin hunting. This will be over quickly, Krelvor said. But I appreciate your willingness to provide entertainment for my troops. Morale has been low, stuck in orbit around your unimpressive world. When the Admiral left, Lieutenant Commander Ben Hayes approached Powell. He took the bait, sir. Of course he did, Powell replied. Pride is their weakness. Now let's hope Rodriguez and her team can exploit it. The day of the exercise arrived. The Defiant slipped out of its hidden underwater dock and headed to open waters. On the bridge, Captain Rodriguez addressed her crew. Today we're not trying to win, she said. We just need to last long enough to gather data on their targeting systems and shield frequencies. Every minute we survive teaches us something new. Her tactical officer looked nervous. What if they use real weapons instead of the training ones agreed upon? Rodriguez smiled grimly. That's exactly what we're counting on. In his lunar command center, Governor Zoltek watched the exercise preparations with interest. A secure communication from General Dravkor flashed on his screen. This exercise presents an opportunity, Dravkor said without preamble. The human vessel they're using is reportedly their most advanced. If we can disable it and study its technology, it will help us better assess their capabilities. The Bay. Agreement specified non-lethal weapons, Zoltek pointed out. Of course, we will only disable their vessel, not destroy it. A simple engine malfunction in our targeting systems. Easily explained as an unfortunate error. 26 hours later, the Zoridian patrol ship Vengeance located the Defiant. Captain Rodriguez had employed every evasion tactic known to human naval warfare, but the alien sensors were simply too advanced. They've found us, her tactical officer reported. They're hailing. The Zoridian commander appeared on screen. Human vessel, you have been located and targeted. According to exercise parameters, you are now neutralized. Power down your engines and prepare for inspection. Rodriguez put on her best expression of defeat. We acknowledge. Beginning shutdown procedures. But as the Zoridian ship approached, Rodriguez gave a silent signal to her crew. Suddenly, the Defiant's systems flared to life. The experimental reflective hull began absorbing and redirecting energy in patterns designed to confuse Zoridian sensors. What trickery is this? The Zoridian commander demanded. Just a little human ingenuity, Rodriguez replied. Exercise parameters. Didn't prohibit evasive maneuvers until capture was complete. Angered, the Zoridian commander ordered his weapons officer to fire a warning shot. But rather than the low-power training beam agreed upon, a full-strength energy blast struck the Defiant's starboard side. Alarms blared on the human ship as damage reports flooded in. Rodriguez had expected this. The intelligence from Campbell's team had suggested the Zoridians might accidentally use real weapons. Now, Mr. Fisher, she ordered her weapons officer. The modified railguns fired, launching projectiles that shouldn't have troubled Zoridian shields. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. They carried electromagnetic pulse generators tuned to the exact frequency of Zoridian shield systems, based on data gathered by Dr. Martinez. To everyone's surprise, especially the Zoridians, the pulses disrupted their shields just long enough for several projectiles to strike the hull directly. The damage was minimal, but the message was clear. Humans had found a weakness in supposedly impenetrable Zoridian defenses. Target their engines and withdraw, Rodriguez ordered as her ship shuddered from another Zoridian blast. We've got what we came for. The Defiant fired again, this time hitting the Zoridian vessel's propulsion system, then engaged its emergency thrusters, disappearing into a nearby storm system. On the lunar base, Governor Zoltek received the report from the damaged Zoridian ship with disbelief. Impossible, he said. Their weapons are primitive. Our shields should have held. Nevertheless, Commander Zevtok replied. The human ship damaged the Vengeance and escaped. They adapted their weapons specifically to our shield frequency. 4. The first time, Zoltek felt a flicker of concern. Perhaps these humans weren't as primitive as they appeared. In Washington, Earth's Unified Military Command received Rodriguez's report with cautious optimism. It worked, General Samantha Wright told the assembled leaders. The Defiant confirmed our theories about their shield technology. We can hurt them. President Eleanor Walsh nodded slowly. But they'll be angry now. This changes everything. No, Madam President, General Wright corrected. This just accelerates their timeline. They were always going to try to take our planet. Now they'll just do it sooner. Supreme Commander Thulvex arrived in Earth's orbit aboard the massive Zoridian dreadnought Inevitable Conquest. His vessel was 3 times larger than any ship previously stationed near Earth, its hull decorated with the marks of 100 successful planetary conquests. The situation has become unacceptable, he announced to the assembled Zoridian command staff. These humans have damaged an Imperial vessel and refuse to acknowledge the consequences of their actions. Governor Zoltek stood, at attention. Supreme Commander, I take full responsibility for— Silence, Thulvex cut him off. Your failure to properly assess these creatures is noted. Now we will correct your mistakes. He activated a holographic display showing Earth from multiple angles, with key human military installations highlighted. We will launch simultaneous strikes on their primary defense centers, he said. Once their command structure is eliminated, their resistance will crumble. The operation begins in 6 hours. On Earth, General Samantha Wright received word of the Zoridian fleet movement from their limited sensor network. They're positioning for an attack, she told President Walsh during an emergency meeting in the underground command center. Multiple ships moving into low orbit. The president's face was grim. Then diplomacy has failed. What can we do against their technology? Admiral Powell, recently recalled from the horizon, stepped forward. We fight, Madam President. Not conventionally, but in ways they won't expect. He nodded to Lisa Nguyen, who displayed the data gathered from their surveillance operations. The Zoridians have 3 key weaknesses, Powell explained. First, they rely heavily on Central Command. Their soldiers follow orders precisely but show limited initiative when communications are disrupted. Wright continued. Second, their exoskeletons, while incredibly strong, limit their flexibility and environmental adaptability. And third, they underestimate us completely. Implement Defense Plan Omega, the President ordered after a moment of consideration. God help us all. As the sun rose over the Pacific, the Inevitable Conquest launched the first strike. Energy weapons more powerful than anything humans had ever witnessed destroyed the naval base at Pearl Harbor in seconds. Similar attacks hit military installations across the globe. Zoridian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, deploying ground forces near major cities. Their soldiers, equipped with energy weapons and personal shields, moved with mechanical precision. Supreme. Commander Thulvex watched the initial reports with satisfaction. As expected, minimal resistance. Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields. He activated a galaxy-wide broadcast channel. Attention, civilized systems of the galactic community. The Zoridian Empire has begun integration of the planet, designated Earth. Its resources will soon serve the greater glory of the Empire. Its inhabitants, while physically unimpressive, will be useful for simple labor tasks. The propaganda broadcast showed footage of human forces retreating before the Zoridian advance, with narration mocking their primitive tactics and fragile physiology. What the cameras didn't show was Private First Class Daniel Miller and his squad hiding in the rubble of Washington, D.C. They watched as a Zoridian patrol marched past their position, scanning for survivors. Remember the plan, Miller whispered to his team. Wait for them to pass, then target their command unit from behind. The squad had been equipped with the new electromagnetic pulse rifles developed by Jason Garcia and his engineering team. The weapons looked crude, barely more than tubes with wiring, but they carried a modified version of the pulse that had disrupted the Zoridian shields during the naval exercise. When the patrol was 30 meters past their position, Miller gave the signal. 6 pulse rifles fired simultaneously, temporarily disrupting the Zeridians' personal shields. Before they could recover, conventional bullets found gaps in their exoskeletons, precisely the weak points Dr. Simmons had identified in her xenobiological studies. Similar scenes played out across the globe as human special forces units employed guerrilla tactics against the Zoridian forces. They avoided direct confrontation, instead striking quickly at commanders and communication nodes before melting away into terrain the Zoridians found difficult to navigate. In his command center, Thulvex received increasingly concerning reports. Supreme, Commander, we've lost contact with Ground Force Alpha in the region they call Amazon, reported his communications officer. And Task Force Omega reports their commander was killed by a primitive projectile weapon that somehow penetrated his shield. Impossible, Thulvex said. Their weapons are ineffective against our technology. Nevertheless, the officer continued, casualty rates are 12% higher than projected. The humans are targeting officers specifically and using the environment against our troops. On the Zoridian command ship, Dr. Kate Simmons had been brought in for questioning. Despite being a prisoner, she maintained a calm demeanor as Governor Zoltek interrogated her. Explain how your people modified their weapons, he demanded. How did they identify our shield frequencies? Simmons smiled slightly. We observed. We adapted. It's what humans do best. Your species is physically inferior, Zoltek insisted. You cannot hope to match Zoridian might. Physical strength isn't everything, Simmons replied. You evolved with natural armor and strength, so you focused on direct combat. We evolved with endurance and problem-solving abilities, so we find different ways to fight. In Chicago, Jason Garcia led a team of engineers working frantically in a hidden underground facility. They had been reverse engineering Zoridian technology from damaged equipment recovered in the early battles. The power conduits connect here, he explained to General Wright, who had come to check their progress. Their weapons use a crystalline focus element we can't replicate, but we can disable it with targeted electromagnetic interference. Wright looked at the modified human weapons spread across the workshop tables. How many can you produce? With the current manufacturing network, maybe 1,000 per day. It's not enough to equip everyone, but it's enough for our special forces, Wright finished. Keep working. Back in orbit, Supreme Commander Thulvex watched with growing frustration as more reports of Zoridian casualties arrived. They're using the urban environments against us, his tactical officer explained. Setting traps, collapsing structures on our troops, and their hit-and-run tactics are proving difficult to counter. They're savages, Thulvex snarled, using primitive tricks instead of facing us honorably. Effective savages, the officer noted, before quickly adding, Supreme Commander, after 3 days of fighting, the Zoridian advance had slowed considerably. What was supposed to be a swift subjugation had turned into a grinding conflict with mounting Zoridian casualties. In a particularly devastating operation, Major Campbell's Special Forces team had infiltrated a Zoridian forward base and planted explosives on their antimatter power generators. The resulting explosion destroyed half their ground fleet in the European theater. Admiral Powell, commanding Earth's remaining naval forces from a mobile underwater base, launched a daring attack on Zoridian supply ships using submarines equipped with modified torpedoes. President Walsh addressed the human resistance from a hardened bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. We cannot match them ship for ship or soldier for soldier, she acknowledged, but we will not surrender our home. Humanity has faced extinction before and survived. We will endure. We will persist. And we will show these invaders what humans are truly capable of when backed into a corner. On the 6th day of the invasion, Supreme Commander Thulvex received a communication from the Imperial High Command. Your progress is unsatisfactory, the Imperial Overseer stated coldly. These humans were supposed to be subjugated by now. Explain your failure. Thulvex struggled to find words. They fight differently than expected. Not with strength, but with cunning. They target our weaknesses specifically, suggesting detailed knowledge of our technology and physiology. Are you saying these primitive creatures are outsmarting the Empire's finest commander? Thulvex straightened. No, Overseer. I am saying we underestimated them. I request reinforcements to complete this operation properly. As the communication ended, Thulvex stared at the blue planet below. For the first time in his military career, he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. 3 weeks into the invasion, Earth looked very different. Many cities lay in ruins, with Zeridian patrols moving through empty streets. Yet despite their technological superiority, the aliens controlled barely 30% of the planet's surface. In the inevitable Conquest medical bay, a Zeridian soldier thrashed against his restraints, shrieking in pain. His exoskeleton was cracked in several places, with a human bullet lodged near what passed for his spine. "How is he still conscious?" Supreme Commander Thulvex asked the medical officer. "That wound should have triggered hibernation mode." "The humans use some kind of chemical on their projectiles," the medical officer explained. "It disrupts our natural pain suppression systems." Thulvex watched the suffering soldier with growing concern. Zeridians weren't accustomed to pain. Their exoskeletons prevented most injuries, and their biology automatically shut down consciousness when serious damage occurred. But the humans had found a way around this advantage. "They keep adapting," he said quietly. On the other side of the medical bay, Dr. Kate Simmons was permitted to treat captured human soldiers under Zeridian supervision. She moved from bed to bed, checking wounds and offering words of encouragement. One young soldier grabbed her arm as she passed. His leg was heavily bandaged, likely broken in several places. "Doctor," he whispered through clenched teeth. "We got 5 of them before they took us." 5, Simmons nodded. "Rest now. Save your strength." A Zeridian guard approached. "These humans continue to fight despite severe injuries. How is this possible? Their pain must be extreme." Simmons looked up at the alien towering over her. "Pain is an old friend to humans. We've evolved alongside it. It doesn't stop us. Sometimes it drives us." In the remains of Atlanta, Major Campbell's team moved silently through the sewers beneath the Zeridian occupation zone. Each soldier carried a backpack containing one of Jason Garcia's newest inventions, a device that could jam Zeridian communications and sensors within a half-mile radius. "Remember," Campbell whispered to his team, "we place the devices at the junction points, activate them simultaneously, and then the main assault begins." Above ground, Zeridian patrols had grown increasingly cautious. After weeks of human ambushes, even the lowest-ranking soldiers were on edge. "Movement detected," one Zeridian reported, pointing his scanner toward a collapsed building. "Probably just vermin," his commander replied. "These humans keep many animals as companions." The first soldier moved closer to investigate. "No, this reading is larger." He never finished the sentence. Private Miller's squad had been waiting, camouflaged among the rubble. Their modified weapons fired in unison, dropping the Zeridian patrol before they could call for backup. Similar scenes played out across the globe as human resistance fighters struck with increasing coordination and effectiveness. For every human that fell, they took down multiple Zeridians, not through superior strength but through planning, adaptability, and sheer determination. On the inevitable conquest, Supreme Commander Thulvex called an emergency meeting of his surviving officers. "Our casualties continue to mount," he said, displaying the latest figures. "We've lost 17% of our ground forces and 23% of our command personnel." Commander Zevtak, now promoted after Governor Zoltek's death in a human artillery strike, spoke up. "Supreme Commander, I've been studying these humans more closely. Their physical weakness masks something unexpected. They continue fighting with injuries that would incapacitate our soldiers. Their endurance exceeds our own." "Explain," Thulvex ordered. "They evolved on a high-gravity world with no natural armor. Their healing systems are remarkably efficient. Bones that break, knit back together. Wounds close and repair themselves. And most importantly, they've evolved to function through pain." Zevtak brought up video footage of human soldiers continuing to fight despite grievous injuries. Science Officer Merle Don added, "They also display unusual psychological resilience. When we destroy their cities, instead of breaking their will, it seems to strengthen their resolve." Thulvex pondered this information. For the first time in the Empire's long history of conquests, they faced a species that might be physically weaker, but possessed other traits that made them formidable opponents. In Washington, D.C., the largest human counteroffensive began. As Campbell's team activated their jamming devices, Zeridian communications went silent. Their coordinated units suddenly found themselves isolated, unable to receive orders or support. General Wright's forces struck from multiple directions using the modified weapons developed by Garcia's engineering team. The human soldiers had trained extensively for this moment, knowing they would face enemies stronger and better armored than themselves. What the Zeridians didn't expect was the humans' willingness to endure. Soldiers with broken bones kept advancing. Wounded fighters dragged themselves forward to place explosives. Every human fought not just until they were injured, but until they were physically incapable of continuing. From his command post, Admiral Powell directed the naval component of the attack. Submarines surfaced in the Potomac River, launching modified missiles at Zeridian air support. The remaining fighter jets of Earth's air forces provided cover, drawing Zeridian fire while ground troops advanced. After 12 hours of intense fighting, humans had reclaimed the nation's capital. Similar victories occurred in other major cities, as the resistance struck globally in coordinated attacks. On the inevitable conquest, Supreme Commander Thulvex received the reports with growing alarm. "We're losing ground on all fronts," his tactical officer reported. "Human forces have adapted to our weapons and tactics faster than we can develop countermeasures." The Imperial communicator chimed. The overseer's face appeared, his expression severe. "Supreme Commander, the Imperial Council has reviewed your situation. The losses are unacceptable. You are ordered to initiate contact for ceasefire negotiations." Ceasefire? Thulvex couldn't hide his shock. The Empire does not negotiate with lesser species. These humans have proven themselves more costly to subdue than their world is worth, the overseer replied coldly. "We will establish trade relations instead of conquest. The Empire's resources are needed elsewhere." After the communication ended, Thulvex stood silently at the viewport, watching Earth rotate below. A planet of physically weak beings who had somehow managed to fight the mighty Zeridian Empire to a standstill. 2 days later, in the ruins of the United Nations building in New York, President Walsh faced Supreme Commander Thulvex across a makeshift conference table. "The Zeridian Empire offers terms for ending hostilities," Thulvex stated formally. "We recognize Earth as a sovereign world and propose trade relations rather than integration into the Empire." Walsh's expression remained neutral. "And what changed the Empire's mind about conquering us?" Thulvex hesitated. "You are not what we expected." Later, as human and Zeridian representatives worked out detailed terms, Dr. Simmons found herself in conversation with Commander Zevtak. "I still don't understand," the Zeridian admitted. "Your people are physically weaker than ours in every measurable way. How did you resist us so effectively?" Simmons smiled. "Strength takes many forms. You evolved with natural armor and power, so you never needed to develop alternatives. We evolved naked on a dangerous world, so we learned to adapt, to endure, to outthink threats we couldn't overpower." "The Empire has encountered thousands of species," Zevtak said. "None have fought like humans." "We've been fighting since we climbed down from the trees," Simmons replied. "Not just against others, but against our own world. Disease, natural disasters, predators. Survival is in our blood." In the following months, as reconstruction began, an unusual sight became common in Earth cities. Zeridian soldiers working alongside humans to clear rubble and rebuild. The former invaders seemed genuinely curious about these strange, soft-skinned beings who had somehow stood against their empire. Admiral Powell, watching a mixed human Zeridian engineering team repair a bridge, said to General Wright, "They underestimated us because we were different. They saw our physical weakness and assumed we were simply lesser beings." Wright nodded. "A mistake made by many throughout human history, judging strength by only one measure." "And now?" Powell asked. "Now," Wright replied with a smile, "they'll spread the word throughout their empire. Don't underestimate the humans. They might look weak, but they are the most dangerous species in the galaxy.